Well, folks. What did we talk about? We talked about what would happen this week. And holy smokes, it did not disappoint. Wow. Big green day today. Holy shit. Let's get right into it. Nasdaq up 4.25. SPY up about 2.5. It was up 3% at one point. It retraced a little bit lower. But damn, did Jerome Powell smooth talk the market? Holy shit. So we got a lot to get into. He said a lot of big things. Biggest thing I noticed he said was it will likely become appropriate to slow. What he means by slow is slow their rate hikes. Um, as conditions improve, which that's what I said. I said this all along. I was like, the first time you hear Jerome Powell, maybe not the first time. We still have a little bit to see, but if you get any sense that Jerome Powell is thinking that they might slow their rate hikes, that is mega bullish and crazy. And look what the market did. It responded with, yes, we like that. Holy shit, SPY went straight up. But we did get a tiny little sell-off there at close. We lost actually a pretty big sell-off, a $2 sell-off. And of course, after hours are going down a little bit because Meta's actually going kind of green now. Because we had some earnings, but I'll get into that after this. But that's huge. I mean, that is just monstrous. It tells you that Powell is not looking to rug pull the market, should he not have to. So this is all just face value right now. The market reacted very positively. We still got to see what tomorrow brings us. I'm not going into tomorrow with any kind of bias. I'm holding a SPY call overnight. I got a big SPY call for $400 call for 2 weeks out. So I'm bullish. I think the market is going to react very positively. I don't think this was. I don't think we've seen nothing yet. I think this is only the first small move of many to come, if Powell ends up being correct and if the market actually believes him, which today it does, and it usually does that. We've seen this before on FOMC. It'll go straight up all day FOMC, or not all day, but it'll go straight up after the rate hike, and then next day it just dumps. So it's to be seen, but I'll get into more on why this is probably not just some fake out dump and actually a nice big rally. So another thing he said that was huge was that he believes we're at neutral, which now with this latest rate hike today means we're at 2.25% federal funds rate. And he thinks that is neutral, which means that when this is all said and done, that's where they're looking to plant the funds rate at. So that means that if inflation actually becomes tamed within these next couple months, and they only have to raise it maybe another percent or so, then they will wait and see what inflation does from there. And then if inflation is coming down, which it looks like inflation is coming down because oil is coming down, then, and the market is expecting inflation to come down this next month, then that means that we will we will cut interest rates by 1% to rest back at 2.25, which is really actually a nice number, which let's see, Fed funds. So I'm gonna actually make another. I'll make another video today. I just have to talk about this. What Jerome Powell said was just so huge. It's crazy. So 2.25 is about where we rested in 2019, and that was, I mean, it's not a high number. You zoom out on what the Fed has done in the past, and this is actually a really like dovish number. I mean, they got up to like 5.25 right before 2008. They've been up to like 6.5 from the dot-com bubble, so they've been a lot more hawkish than they are being presently, which is interesting. It's all based on whether or not inflation does come down and their interest rates are actually effective in killing demand. And he, not killing demand, but he used very nice terms, softening demand. The labor market is softening a little bit. All these nice little terms to sweet talk us. So I appreciate that, Jerome. But that's huge that he's like, yep, 2.25. That's what we want to see, which is, I mean, people were expecting, shit, what are we going to rest at, like 4.5%? People were worried, but him coming out saying that is a very good sign, but he's changed his mind before. I got to play a little devil's advocate. Otherwise, I'm going to go like, I need full port SPY calls right now. But this is big because no one knew. And he said a lot of about his SEP reports, the Summary of Economic Projections. He said a lot about how they were way wrong back in December. They were a little too negative on their projections, and back in March as well, they were a little too negative. They expected things to get a lot worse than they have. So that's why he came out and gave us some dovish talk today, which is fantastic. So he just that's crazy huge that we know 2.25% is where they want to plant their It is where they want to park the car once inflation is killed. But this is all, of course, assuming that he's right, that inflation does die by the time we get to like 3.25 or whatever they're trying to get to, or 3.5. So that is all assuming that is correct. Another thing I thought was funny from his press conference is every time he got asked about a recession, he just completely deflected on that, which I always find amusing. That the guy who is in charge of basically monetary policy in the entire country and for the world reserve currency, so almost for the entire world, if you think about it. I find it fascinating that he refuses to answer any questions about a recession. He just completely deflects, just says, "That's not our job. It's not our job. We're not thinking about that. Go fuck yourself." So that was interesting. I don't think the market reacted at all to that because I was watching SPY as he was talking about that, and it had no reaction. It was going straight up today. He said demand is moderating, which is good. I don't know how much I agree with him. I mean, it looks like consumer spending is coming down a little bit. So now it's just a question of how much of it is going to be propped up by the still high consumer demand and the still hot labor market. How much of inflation is propped up by that versus how much is propped up by the cost of oil. Housing's not affected by oil. Most people's electricity isn't. Food and food shortages aren't affected by oil. The Fed has no control over any of those. So knowing that inflation is quite broad-based across all of those things, it's going to be interesting to see once oil returns to normal levels if inflation fully goes down with it or if it's stubborn. We want to see it come down with it. If it's stubborn, then we know what the Fed's going to do. They're just going to keep hike. And so he also acknowledged the lagging effects of monetary policy because, like I've said before, it takes months and months and months for these interest rate hikes to actually be felt by the economy. So he mentioned that he's aware of that, but they know, just like we saw in COVID, they know they have the power to turn on the money printer and stimulate the economy overnight. Like we saw that back in COVID. So that's why, but they don't have that power to do the opposite. They do if they wanted to go like, all right, we're doing 1,000 basis point hike. Then that would just kill inflation probably, but also kill the economy. But they know that they can stimulate the economy instantly, literally overnight if they need to, but they can't de-stimulate it. It's a slow process to do that because they have to be careful, otherwise the market panics. So that is interesting that he talked about that he is self-aware. He's a smart fella. He knows what's up. But so now that we know that they're trying to get to 3.5%, and he said that they want the neutral rate to be 2.25, we know now that they have about 1% to 1.5% to go to. And the interesting thing is now that we will not hear back from Powell until September 21st. So that means we get almost a full 2 months of no Fed. Yay! We'll still get like FOMC minutes and stuff, I think, next month, where they basically they give us a summary of what they talked about during this FOMC meeting. So that, I mean, they just go on, and then they go on TV and blabbermouth, every time Powell goes on some random, not like podcast, but some random convention he goes to, they'll be like, hey, what do you think? And he'll say something and they'll fuck everything up. Who knows? But, so with that, I can write out a little roadmap of, maybe I don't want to even open that. Yeah, here we go. So, can write out a little roadmap. What do we got? September 21st. Let's say inflation. So we're still going to be watching for CPI. I'm not as negative in the CPI as I was previously because I think oil was a big part of it. So say next month we get a CPI reading. I mean, if we get a CPI reading of like 7.8% or something next month, that would be huge. If that inflation dropped to a full percent, the market would go crazy off of that. And the Fed would see that. So assuming that CPI becomes, it starts downtrending over these next couple months, so they'll have the July CPI in August is released in August, and then the August CPI is released in September before their meeting. So they'll have two full reports to see how inflation is being affected. They'll have all sorts of earnings to see, all sorts of consumer data. They're going to just be collecting and consuming all this data. So let's assume inflation does go down with gas, like everyone's saying it will, and I agree, I think it will. Then they can come out and be like, all right, inflation is coming down. We're only going to do a 0.5% hike. That would be huge because that's a slowing of rate hikes like I've talked about. Or if it's really, really good, they could be like, hey, we're going to go down to 0.25. We think the market's doing its job for us. That would be crazy too. But I'm going to assume it's going to be 0.25 to 0.5%. So, assuming that they do the 0.5%, they meet again in November, whatever that is, question mark. Then, let's see if I'm actually in frame. Can you guys see this? Maybe I should do bigger font. Duh. Then, let's say, hell, inflation's down to 5%. They can come out and be like, hey, we're doing 0.25. And so they do 0.25, and now they're like, well, we're nearing our top rate. You know, we're slowing down. They've slowed down. They've gone from 0.5 potentially, which I imagine that they will in September, unless inflation really gets killed. But I will be assuming that they do 0.5, which is still bullish. That's a slowdown from where we were. Then they can do a 0.25 in November. Then December comes around, and this is all assuming we don't have a complete earnings recession. We've already had our multiples compression, where all the P&Es of all these overpriced stocks have compressed, and we've repriced and priced in the recession. No, we priced in just the fact that everything was overvalued and that things had to come down for the sake of inflation. So we've priced that in, and then say they come in December and say 0.25, and then we are at, we got that, we're at what, 2.75. So that would bring us right about to 3.5, and then Powell might just say, all right, this is it, boys. Assuming inflation is dead by the end of the year, we will not be raising hikes, and we will be monitoring the situation. And he might just say something along the lines of, we may look to reverse. Holy shit. Or slash pause. But reverse would be like, duh, holy shit, market goes straight through the roof. So this is the super bullish game plan if things go according to what Powell thinks. Otherwise, CPI is bad in August and September. Powell comes out in September and says 0.75. We're doing 0.75. We're going to reach that quick. We're going to reach that 3.5% quicker than we anticipated. But this isn't quicker than he anticipated. So that's another thing, is that he basically took off the table for now. He's flip-flopped before, but for now he has said that he essentially guaranteed that we're never going to do a full percent to full 1.25% rate hike, which is huge because the whole market was like, are they going to do that? They've hinted at potentially doing that, but now we know, hey, we're not going to do that. 0.75, that's all we think we need to do. We are seeing that the bond market is tightening. Everything's tightening, all the jargon that they use. So say they do that, September, November, we still get a bad CPI. They come out, and this time they do 0.5 because then they're at or above their intended 3.5%. Or they're already there, and then, hey, come December, things still aren't that good. We'll do 0.25%. 0.25%, and then he says, all right, we'll monitor and potentially pause from here. Keyword pause. So we got the keyword slow, that they're looking at slowing rate hikes. So that's huge, and that's why you see big green everywhere. So just a crazy day. Very big news from Powell. This is exactly what us bulls are waiting on. I mean, holy shit, it's huge. So now that we know 0.25 is where they're headed, we can look back at 2019 and see that, hey, that's what we got to. But even back in 2019, I was a little worried, or I wasn't a little worried. I wasn't doing stocks, but in 2019, the market got a little too like it was looking like it was going to dip. So that's when the Fed actually reversed there. They were like, ah, shit, maybe we went a little too high, and then they dropped it about percent from May to December of 2019, and then ironically came COVID, where they dropped it to 0. So this is huge. Assuming everything that Powell says goes to plan, which it rarely has, he could come out on top and be like, see, bitches, I told y'all inflation's transitory. But it's still a lot to be seen. But just the fact that we know now that the Fed is, we know what they're aiming for. That's kind of been the scary part this entire time. We didn't know if they were ever going to do 100 basis points. We didn't know if they were going to just keep going until they see inflation come down. But now it's just all about monitoring the CPI numbers, the consumer data, and just going back to doing the same old thing. You know, I'm not thrilled. I was in a lot of shorts, so Or I mean, I still came out green on the day. I had some big S&P trades, some big calls. I got like 450 bucks on the S&P today. Um, so we had a greener day on the account, but overall I was holding like Apple calls. I was not expecting Powell to come out and be this sweet talk in the market. Like this is crazy. He came out and he just said all the right things, and I was thinking maybe he would still come out hawkish because they didn't want to go too slow on inflation, which he mentioned that they are worried about going too slow because if it gets out of hand, then they're behind it. But I was not expecting this. So it is. I mean, that's fantastic. I'm thrilled. It's awesome. Of course, if I go back in time, I'd be like, hey, why short anything when you should just be long anything? But I don't really care about that. I got no FOMO. I feel no FOMO now. I'm just like, this is awesome. Market's looking good. There's still a long ways up. I'm not looking at anything and being like, oh shit, why did I not load up on AMD at 70 bucks? Because there were still a lot of unknowns. This is the market we're in, and so we still have AMD in the channel. We still this was a big breakout on SPY right now, though. We got a huge breakout of this. I'll make this a little bigger so everyone can see it. Make it nice and green too, because that symbolizes green when we go above this line. So we broke out above that big thick green line where you saw we were rejected off of that. Broke out of there. That's a huge breakout and just insane volume, short covering rally. Now it's got to hold up. We got to see it hold up. I imagine we might see a dip tomorrow or the day after in the weekend, assuming earnings aren't terrible on Thursday. Which, by the way, Meta missed on their earnings, but they're going up slightly. Qualcomm, they hit all their earnings. They beat expectations, but they have weak guidance in the Q4, of course, so they are down. But I will talk about all my trades in another video. I just have to get this one out there because this is monumental news. So, yeah, that's what went down with the FOMC today. Big day. It's crazy. Crazy day. So, take it easy, folks. I'll be back on with another vid with my trading recap today. Bye.